Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. Byron Nelson DraftKings picks and preview. If you want to play in the Pat Mayo Experience Open, the best contest on DraftKings, I mean, why wouldn't you? Hit the description of this video or podcast, find the link, get yourself in. $15 to play, 3 max entry, and if we fill it as quickly as possible, we'll get a pretty juicy one for the PGA Championship next week. Only 3,000 entries. It's already over half full. Let's try to get that done by the end of Tuesday and show the DraftKings people like, hey, we can have like 6,000 people in a contest and approach that 10 or 100,000 guaranteed prize pool like we did at the Masters. Probably not going to be quite as lofty. People don't seem to be quite as interested in the PGA Championship as they are in the Masters. Who would have thunk? But if we can fill this tournament up, it is the best one. There is no rake, so it is the one that you want to play in. Perfect flat payout structure as well. And become a member at fantasynational.com today. If you do it on Wednesday, you get the weekly membership and you get all the Byron Nelson stuff and the ability to research and generate your lineups and use all the tools for the PGA Championship next week through next Wednesday. So it's a 2-for-1. You want to take advantage of that, fantasynational.com. All the stats you see in the show will be provided from fantasynational.com. So if you want more access to that, just become a member. Joining me to break down the field, it is... Actually, you know what? If you want to get into a draw for 20 DK bucks, get one of those Millionaire Maker entries. Before we get to Drew Mathews, smash the like button for the episode, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and tell me the 2 players from above $9,000 that you will be fading, full out fading, this week at the Byron Nelson. Drew Mathews, fantasygolfbag.com. What's up, man?
Not much. Yeah, you had to get out that promo before me. That's way more important. Yeah, going good, man. We're excited to get through this week. Some good-sized pools, and then try to get ready for the PGA Championship next week.
I discussed this with Feinberg on Monday's show. People can go back and check that out. If you haven't watched it, there's giveaways in that show, and you smash the like button for that one as well. And just pump up those view numbers, those download numbers. Need all of those all the time. But I have a really bad feel for this tournament, and maybe that's a good thing because I've had like a good feel for like 3 of the past 5 tournaments. I've been absolute dog shit, so maybe this is the path that I need to take. I don't really know what to do. I might have to just trust the stats this week instead of making my own outlandish proclamations.
Yeah, I've kind of fell into a trap. I started doing some different weights on time frames for some of these guys because we haven't seen some since the Masters, aka Brooks, and then a lot of the other guys that aren't as elite have been playing recently. So like some of the stats, if I look at different time periods, I start getting different results, and I've really fallen into a hole. So hopefully, I think I found a clear path, hopefully to success. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm with you. It's a interesting week to dive in, whether you're using just stats. Obviously, there's not a lot of course history, recent form. I mean, everyone's kind of got different schedules with this major season progressing.
Well, let's talk about the course just a little bit. Trinity Forest in Dallas, Texas. This is the second year that it's been held for the Byron Nelson. Par 71, you can find yardages up to like 7,550 yards. It played last year at 7,380 according to the official scorecard. It seems like they'll adjust that a little bit. Aaron Wise is the defending champion. There's basically no rough around this course. There's a few waste areas, but it's pretty wide open. American links, Drew. What does that mean to you, American links? Because when I think of it, I just think like Chambers Bay, and that's not great.
No, yeah, Chambers Bay is probably a good comparison. There's really not a lot of American links. When we talk links, we're talking like overseas, like British Open stuff. And when you throw in the American side, you'll find that this course played a lot more like just American type of golf course. The fairways will be soft this year. The greens were pretty soft last year. Yeah, it doesn't change my perspective on the golf course. It's just a nice fancy name to throw. It looks linksy because it's somewhat plainy. It's got hills in the fairways. Not a lot of trees on the golf course. It's in a forest, but there's no trees on the golf course. But yeah, it doesn't really change my perspective on the course itself.
Yeah, no trees, no water, and 85 bunkers scattered across the ground. So when we look at the skill set of players that we want to go with here, just glancing at the leaderboard from last year, when there were somewhat damp conditions, almost mirroring what we're going to see this year, like, do you have to be a bomber, do you think? Because I don't think that you do.
No, you're right. So I've heard a lot of people already say this course is really long, and it is 7,300 yards, par 70 or 7,400 yards, par 71. It actually is going to be shorter than what we saw last week at Quail Hollow. So I was checking some of the stats for actual par fours because that's a good determination of the length of a golf course. Last week at Quail Hollow, there was 9 par 4s over 450. This week, we should only see 4 over 450. So less than half of what we saw last week. A good chunk of that is par 3s, a lot of over 200 yards. But I don't think you have to be a bomber here. I think it helps because, you think of a bomber, they tend to spray it. So I don't think it hurts you as much. So I'm kind of in the middle there. I can see I'm targeting bombers for sure, but I'm not Xing out guys like CT Pan, like shorter hitter guys. I don't think it's really going to be a bomb and gouge, quote unquote, golf tournament.
Hey, well, you mentioned the par 4s, how there's only 4 over 450. 2 of those are over 500, but then there's 6 that are 400 to 450 yards. Then there's a drivable 315-yard hole that everyone basically just makes birdie on. There's even a few eagles that pop up from time to time. And realistically, if you're playing on the PGA Tour and you can't get to a 315-yard par 4, like, you should probably just call it quits, shouldn't you?
You would think. There's always a few handful of guys that don't hit it very far that survive week to week. But I think if you don't hit it 315 yards on the PGA Tour, just quit golf.
Yeah, see, that's the best way to go about this. So if we've determined that as the skill set, just ball striking in general is very important for me, but I did lean approach over off the tee stuff. I didn't even actually wait in driving distance because I just want those hot iron players, only because these greens are so incredibly large. They're 13,000 square feet that, if guys aren't sticking it within reasonable distance, like the 3-putt percentage could be a bit higher. It's higher than an average tour event, but not quite as high as you would think based on the size, like just the overall size of these greens are so big that you'd think there'd be 3 putts everywhere, but the greens played so slow last year that it wasn't really that big of a deal. And they're sort of like cereal bowl shaped that all of the pins are basically put into like location areas. I remember watching this last year. Leishman had it figured out in the first round that if you just hit it on the hill right behind the hole, it'll just roll back right to the hole, easy tap in birdie. So I really do think that the approaches, more so than a lot of weeks, are really going to play a factor, especially in DraftKings scoring, because the winning score is going to be like the Sony Open here, like minus 25 or something.
Yeah, I weighed off the tee a lot more than driving distance. I didn't look at driving distance at all, to be honest. Off the tee is a pretty good gouge because you get to see guys that hit it a long way, but they also hit it somewhat accurately because it's relative to the distance into the hole. So I like using off the tee, and it does look like off the tee seems to be more stable week to week. So that's what I viewed. And then obviously stroke gain approach. I even used green and regulation, even though these greens are huge and the green and regulation percentage last year was huge. It seemed like guys coming into the event hitting a lot of greens tended to play better last year. So even though the green regulation was so high, it looks like, everyone can hit these greens. I still wanted to use that just because there's not been a lot of greens recently that have been this big. So I kind of view green regulation as a proximity stat almost. It just kind of encompasses more sample size, I guess. So yeah, pretty straightforward there.
Yeah, I'm with you on the greens regulation. Instead, I used opportunities gain, which is a fantasynational.com stat, which is just basically greens in regulation or fringe in regulation from 15 feet and in. So it really narrows down the proximity that you want there. The leaders in that, Troy Merritt, Russell Knox, Andrew Landry, Adam Shank, and Hideki, the top 5 over the past 24 rounds. So let's get to Hideki. He is in this above $10,000 area. Of course, Brooks is going to be the highest price player, as he quite deserves to be. Then you have Hideki at 11,000 on the dot. And Brooks was 11.4. Jordan Spieth 10.8. Henrik Stenson 10.3. Mark Leishman $10,000. When I look at this, no matter what sort of range modeling that I use, whether it's short term, whether it's long term, Hideki blows up the entire thing. Like, he is the guy that the statistics love this week. Whether it's off the tee, whether it's on approach, whether it's his ball striking, he's basically the best in the field at all of these things. And the putting, it's always going to be a problem for him. You hope he can hit it close enough on some of these approaches that it's not really going to matter. But in a weaker field event like this, the savings aren't critical going from Brooks to Hideki. That's the only thing, because Brooks is a better player than Hideki is. I know that. For sure. But if we're going to say that one of these guys wins this tournament, I actually think that Hideki's going to put more like oomph into it than where it's very clear that Brooks is just preparing for next week.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's wild to me. Hideki stands out, just terribly well over everybody in the 10K range for me, looking through the different timeframes, like you said. So a lot of my stats for looking at Brooks was kind of weighted. I pulled in a little bit of strokes gained total just because it pulls in what the guys relatively shot at the Masters. Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's being held up a lot by that. When I use a little bit more midterm timeframes, he falls way back. So Hideki's my guy up there. I mean, he ranked first in both of my timeframe models. There's really nothing bad you can say. He played here last year, finished 16th, so you got to like that. Brooks obviously looks like he would fit the golf course well, and I think he'll be somewhat popular. But I'm kind of with you. I don't know what kind of oomph he would have versus a Hideki, and Hideki just looks good. So, like, if you want to use the number side, Hideki's the guy.
I guess the thing is, it depends on how many lineups I play that I could see myself. Like, I don't, like last week I had 0 Rory. And it turned out that you didn't need Rory. I had a bunch of Justin Rose. Rose outperformed Rory. That was good enough. A full fade of Rory was the move in that circumstance. But there was a point like halfway through Sunday where I was like, oh man, I'm such a moron for not taking Rory. This is really stupid. And I feel like I can get myself into that situation with Brooks too, that do I want to go massively overweight on Hideki or divvy that up between him and Brooks because the price point isn't that solid, like it isn't that large between them. And then the rest of the guys in the 10K, you got Spieth, who I'm just not playing. Like that's not going to happen for me here at this price. Stenson, I love. I'm going to use Stenson. And then there's Leishman sitting there in the $10,000 range. He was second last year, first round leader, shot a 10 under to open up his week at Trinity Forest a year ago. But like, do you have any feels for Leishman here? Because he feels like he's going to be the forgotten man in all of this. And it's not like he's playing poorly.
Yeah, if he's going to be underowned, I'll be playing Leishman. He actually grades out slightly better comparatively for both of my models versus Stinson. Stinson has better recent form than Stinson or than Leishman. Sorry, but yeah, I'm kind of torn on Brooks. Like you said, I like going straight overweight or underweight versus Hideki. Hideki doesn't do a lot of upside recently. Like he's had 3 top 10s, I think, in the last 6 events, and he's really look the same every week. Like his stats always look good. So I'm with you as far as, you don't have to go crazy on Hideki. I think a lot of people will venture to him. If you can find one of these other guys in the 10K range and kind of plant your flag there, that should be enough leverage. Just like you said, Rory last week, these guys are all good. And I know Hideki's stats pop off the page, but he doesn't really pay off too much when he's up here at this price tag.
See, yeah, that's the problem. So I'm looking at the projected ownership right now, and it's on a Tuesday morning, so it's not going to be, it's a good sample right now. So we're going to deal with, let's see, 2,500 generated lineups so far. And if you remember at Fantasy National, this is information that you can get access to by going to look at it, every single player in the field and what the people on the site are doing. It's community. You can figure out what other people are up to, and then you can swerve off them when you want to. But I have Brooks and Hideki as the 2 highest, and then Leishman actually ahead of Stenson, which I found somewhat surprising. I really like Stenson this week. I really feel like the tee to green game is coming around for him, especially with these approaches, and he plays these 400 to 450 yard par 4s really well. The lack of distance really shouldn't be a problem. His short game, it was good at Wells Fargo, shockingly enough, but it had been piss poor before that. But 6.1 strokes gained approach at Wells Fargo, 7.3 at the Valspar. Not quite sure what happened at the Masters because we don't have that information, but he was T36 at the Masters. The game is coming back a little bit, but he's lost at least 2 strokes putting in every single one of his past 4 events. If he can just figure that out a little bit, and with a bit of slower greens, maybe that's the way to play it, because we played the Masters, we played Wells Fargo. Those are fast fucking greens. These ones, they played super slow last year, and I don't know if that's going to maintain year after year, but if they are, then Stenson can just hit it to 15 feet and make birdies all day,
which is what he does. Like he grades out extremely well in opportunities game, like you said. Strokes gained approach, I think he is second.
Yes,
and
he's only behind. Yeah, he's only behind Hideki over the past 24 rounds.
Yes. So, yeah, Stinson I like quite a bit. Like I said, Leishman is more of an ownership play for me, but if Leishman's going to be higher than Stinson, then give me all the Stinson. I mean, no one really talks about all these other guys getting ready for the PGA Championship. You've got to imagine Stinson, Leishman even, like these guys are looking ahead to next week. They want to have a good finish this week to be ready for next week. Either one of those guys is kind of like an ownership play for me. They both, Stinson looks better on paper, but it's an ownership play for that low. Up top, though, with Koepka and Matsuyama, I probably try to lean Matsuyama just from a numbers perspective, give you something to lean on there.
Yeah, so I'll probably have Stenson as my highest owned of the 10K guys, and I'll definitely have Hideki. Not sure with what I'm going to do on Brooks yet, if I want to divvy those up or not. If you want the ownership play, I got Spieth at like 4% right now.
Yeah, I'm not playing Spieth. No
Okay.
thanks.
All right. we can make it that easy. That's easy enough.
No, I'm not playing him. And one last thing I'll say on Brooks real quick is one of the guys, Golf Gurus, Skyler over there, that Twitter handle, Golf Savages. He said bet the Brooks double. So this week and next week for the PGA Championship, if you're not going to play him in DFS, get a little bit of not necessarily a hedge, but a little bit of action for this week. If he does come out and win, he's probably in good form to win next week and his number will drop. Go ahead and bet him as a double. Slim chance to win, but might as well up that number a bit.
Yeah, I saw that Baroff. I was scanning Twitter this morning. Ryan Baroff from Golflandia played that as well. If you bet Brooks this week and parlay him with Brooks to win next week, it pays 96 to 1.
Yeah.
So
I'm probably going to do that and avoid Brooks. I might just lean that way.
That's not a terrible idea if you want to go for it. Because as crazy as it sounds, I think that Brooks has a better chance to win next week than he does this week.
It's true. And it might as well get a little action this week if you fade him in DFS.
So after that, in the $9,000 range, we're kicked off by Patrick Reed at $9,800. He's followed by Sungjae, Aaron Wise, the defending champ, Brendan Grace, who was T3 last year, Keith Mitchell, who was T3 last year, and suddenly hot fire Rory Sabatini, who is $9,000. That doesn't look right on paper, but dude is playing great.
Yes, he is. And he played good last year here. So I'm sure he'll get some ownership, even though he's at 9K. Like that's pretty crazy.
I don't like when it comes to a week like this, and like when I'm struggling, I feel like I did this at Valspar, and I didn't hit the winner at Valspar, but I had a really good week. I had Sungjae and Kokrak inside the top 5. Just my overall lineups were good. Even at Valero, my DraftKings lineups were super sharp. Wasn't able to hit the winner that week either because apparently I just don't hit winners anymore. But that's okay. Get some top 5s, get some DraftKings bucks. We can stay above water. I feel like this week you just want to take the talent. Like I look at Rory Sabatini, like he's there, he's playing well. I could be led to him, but I don't know. Like Patrick Reed at $9,800. I don't know if this is the right course for him, but if it's going to mitigate like off the tee stuff a little bit that you can spray it around, like that's perfect for Patrick Reed.
Yeah, he grades out so poorly in my model. Even with a good pop last week, I just can't. I'm not going to play him. I like the guys below him, like Keith Mitchell. I feel like this is a great track for him. What I kind of said at the top of the show, as far as the course length, I don't think this will cause an issue for Sungjae. Like we saw him play last week decent with a longer golf course. So like Sungjae and Keith Mitchell are two guys I'm going to look to here. And Aaron Wise, I assume, is going to be uber popular.
So the way that I see it right now, the most popular player on the slate is not Aaron Wise. He'll be inside the top 10 in terms of ownership. But do you want to know who the projected number 1 player? He's in this range at 23% ownership, which could veer even higher. Who is it?
In the 9K range?
Yeah.
Mitchell, Keith Mitchell.
It is Keith Mitchell. He's going to be the chalkiest guy on the slate.
Well, that's a bummer.
Yeah, that's not great. It'll be like Finau. Like Finau was that guy last week, and Finau made the cut. He was fine, but like he didn't pop into any sort of winning lineups whatsoever. You know, just if Mitchell doesn't go out and churn out a top 10 at that ownership, like he becomes a really good fade, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. It's hard to pass him up. He sticks out to me as a guy in this range that he's like the one I quickly look to. Like if it's drastically different between him and, you know, if you want to throw in Sungjae or Aaron Wise, like I don't know what Aaron Wise's ownership's at right now, but I was really planning to play a good bit of Keith Mitchell. He was supposed to be a little bit popular last week and came in under 15% or 13%, something like that.
Well, it was one of those things where people talked about him. They liked him. It seemed like he was going to be chalky, and then no one played him. Then he goes out and puts up a top 10. That always leads to increased ownership the next week.
Well, yeah.
And for all the course history buffs out there, this is where he spiked last year. He was top 3. He had a fantastic event. So I have him at 23. I have Sungjae and Aaron Wise both at 16. The two guys that no one is owning from this range are Reed and Grace, who are probably the two best players in this range.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I mean, it's tough to say they're the best player. I don't know if I'd lean Reed or Grace off the Masters win for Reed, but I like Brandon Grace. I just don't like him this week. But for like an American Link style course, this could be his cup of tea as far as coming from South Africa, playing a lot of this type of style. Granted, it's going to be softer than hard and fast, but I would probably lean Grace over Reed. I don't know. I don't like playing Patrick Reed, and I certainly don't like playing him at 9,800.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone really likes playing Patrick Reed. But that's sort of the point behind it. Like, I just really wish he had a better Sunday last week. I was highly invested in Patrick Reed to carry a lot of my lineups, and for a while, it was looking pretty good. Then it wasn't looking so good when he took a nosedive. So I don't know if I can get to Reed at that price, but I feel like having one of those two guys to create some leverage and an ownership break in your lineup, even near the top. Like if you have Hideki and you want to pair him with Brendan Grace, I feel like that opens everything up. And one of the ball striking comps that I found to this course, I mean, Silverado was one that I thought was very interesting, where they play the Safeway. And I thought that Phoenix was another one that just seemed to have guys that gained a lot of strokes off the tee at this course are the same people that gained a lot of strokes off the tee at Phoenix, and the same as Silverado. That it was somewhat interesting to me. And, Grace almost won there this year. Hideki's won there twice and plays well there every year when he doesn't withdraw. So pairing those two together as like a correlation, bringing Phoenix into this course, crazier things have happened.
For sure. It's interesting for Silverado. I kind of feel the same way. I'll be honest. So I have 3 lineups in the Pat Mayo Open. I am not going to fade Keith Mitchell in at least one of them. Like I'm playing Keith Mitchell. As far as other ones in that range to leverage, I have a tough time falling on anybody outside of Sungjae. I don't really know where I'm going to fall.
I love Sungjae here. I'm going to be using Sungjae. I just don't think he's going to get that popular. But I have an outright bet on Keith Mitchell to win at 35-1 because I do really like Keith Mitchell this week. But this happened to me at Heritage. I came on this show and I said that the smart move is to fade Sungjae and fade Byun Hanan. They're going to be 2 owned. It's going to be stupid. And I just went all in on them and they were a fucking disaster. Last week when I was on the chat show, and the live chat is at 1 p.m. tomorrow. So the things that we've learned from that is whoever Reed picks as his $6,000 play them because he picked CT Pan and Max Hama. Those are the guys that you want to play. Listen to Reed on that one. And we talked about that last week that Sergio and Stenson are going to be the best GPP plays. And what I didn't use a single share of either of them. Like, eventually, like if I'm going to talk about game theory, I should really start putting it into practice that this time around, maybe not playing Keith Mitchell and playing Brendan Grace and knowing that realistically the divide between them is not going to be 5x like it is in terms of ownership.
Yeah, I feel like you can get yourself in a trap too when you start going through this whole circle of, I really like this guy, but this guy will have leverage. But then you start looking at him and say, well, maybe other people are going to pivot there. I'm not going to play him. It's a vicious cycle. So I try to really narrow down my player pool immediately. And then from there, maybe make some decisions as far as lineup construction goes. Because again, you can play a 25% guy. You just can't have, 6 25% guys. So
it's your actually let me talk to you about this a little bit because I think I think you're right about that, and it gets twisted from time to time. I have no problem playing the chalkiest player on the slate if that's the one I believe in, that I think that they can go. And right now I'm doubting my picks a little bit, which is one part of this, but I don't hate Brendan Grace. I actually like Brendan Grace this week, but I can't just play everyone in the $9,000 range. That if it was like to Sabatini's fine, but I'm not going to not play Keith Mitchell to play Rory Sabatini. That's just not happening. But Brendan Grace is a very good player that I can get behind that. Like if I have them graded out, Mitchell rates out off the charts because he's been playing so well over the past year. But I have the longer form with Brendan Grace. He has a top, like he also tied for 3rd at this course last year. He's a very good player. And if it does pick up with the wind, he is the exact guy that you want to have on your side in any sort of windy conditions. If I see one come in at, let's say 25%, the other guy coming at 5%, you're looking at 5x ownership and where I'm only going to be playing 20 lines. So I was playing 150, I just play them both. But if I'm looking for paths for me to win like the giant $5, which is, winning the giant $5 is going to take an incredible amount of luck. But if that luck is Keith Mitchell missing the cut and I don't have him, then maybe sometimes I have to roll the dice on a decision like that.
Yeah. No, I think Brendan Grace is a fine play. There's 2 different sides to look at, right? Like the 3 max, obviously I like Keith Mitchell. I'm going to play Keith Mitchell and maybe not 100% all 3, but you look at the $5, like you said, like that leverage to fade Keith Mitchell and play Brendan Grace in that tournament is perfect. I personally have to have some type of exposure to Keith Mitchell if I were to fade him in the $5. So whether that's single entry, some FGWC qualifier, whatever it is. But I never, like I'll full fade in certain contests, but I'll never like my whole player pool just X them out. And then, you could look at, I didn't know what his odds are. Like 35-1 Keith Mitchell is actually pretty good for this field.
That's what I thought too. And like when I did my first initial scan of the field, he and Stenson both leapt off the page to me. Just based on their like Stenson was 25-1, Mitchell was 35-1. I was like, well, those are the two guys that I'm rolling with here. Like, let's go. So maybe just leveraging yourself in the betting market versus DraftKings is a way to approach this. But let's talk about the $8,000 guys. We have Kevin Na at the top. No one's going to be owning an $8,900 Kevin Na. That I can guarantee you. Ryan Moore, Beauregard, Rafa, who's probably along with Keith Mitchell going to be the highest owned guy up here. Then we have CH3, Piercy, Peters coming over from Europe, Alex Noren, who's just like a disaster these days, Thorbjorn Olesen at 81, Knox at 8,000, Ryan Palmer at 8,000. The guys that I have highlighted from this range of my initial go-through are Moore, Rafa, Knox, and Palmer. Those would be my four guys. What are you seeing?
Ryan Moore left off the page for me as well. It's funny you mentioned Kevin Na just real quick because I didn't have him written down, and I did see that his last couple of events looked pretty good, and he actually finished 6th at this event last year. So that's actually interesting. I haven't dived into him too much, but I might add him to the list, so it might be worth more of a gander. So
what he did, Kevin Na at the Heritage gained 5.2 strokes tee to green. 3.5 of them were off the tee. He lost strokes on approach, which is kind of crazy. He gained almost 3 putting, gained over 2 around the greens. So I do worry that the approaches were off a little bit. He hasn't gained more than a stroke in approach, like positively, since WGC Mexico, which is kind of crazy in that field against those types of players.
Yeah, and you're right. And as far as like the RBC Heritage, gaining strokes off the tee doesn't take a whole lot because you're not hitting a lot of drivers, which you'll need to hit here. So, yeah, I can see that being an avoid. So I'll go ahead. I just thought that was interesting because I just completely skipped over him.
I mean, I don't want to disparage. I mean, when we talk about like talent in this range too, like I think Kevin Na is an incredibly talented player. You never know which Kevin Na is going to show up. But if you're going to start like, I don't know, like I don't love CH3, but he's cheaper and he's probably a much safer play.
Yes, I think so. Kevin Na is a guy that always seems to, I just don't play and he somehow finishes top 5. Like at the Tour Championship, whatever it was last year, he did something stupid during the playoffs and I couldn't believe it. And he was like 6K. So for me in the 8K range, Ryan Moore sticks out pretty good for me. And looking down the list, Rafa, just from a straight talent level, I don't know. I haven't really been able to grasp his ownership in the States. Like I feel like he comes over here the first week and people are excited to play him, and then he'll play for a few weeks and it slowly diminishes. So I have Rafa on my list. Charles Howell III, you mentioned, I have, but I'm a little bit skeptical off his last 2 events. I played him last week fairly heavily, and that didn't work out. But the one interesting one in this range for me is Scott Piercy. He grades out extremely well for me, like in a shorter term and a longer term. Off the tee is generally pretty good. He's not the best putter, but like his Bermuda's his best surface. Slower green should be a good thing for him. I thought that was really interesting. And then, like you said, Knox and Ryan Palmer are in my player pool right now, but I think a lot of people look to them.
So Piercy's a really interesting one because all of a sudden he recaptured his irons at Heritage and he had just been a disaster for like the previous 2 months. Like he could hit the ball off the tee and then he was just hitting into the woods on his approaches. All of a sudden he has that figured out again. And we know that these are the type of tournaments that Scott Piercy likes, when the winning score is going to be something like 20 under par, where he can just go out, fire at some flag sticks. Hopefully he can drain a few putts that week. When he won the Canadian Open at Hamilton, where it's going to be again this year for the first time in like 6 years, that's exactly what he did. He and Dirt McGirt went out and put on a ball striking clinic, and they actually made some putts that week. Like that's how he got there. And so, yeah. And he tends to play well at Silverado too, which is somewhat interesting. So I can dig Piercy a little bit. The one that I have projected to be the lowest owned in this range might actually be my favorite guy, just because of almost what I mentioned. Like he's sort of like European Scott Piercy, but he's an overall better player. He's slightly more expensive, but Lucas Beauregard can get hot and start making some birdies.
Yes, he can. Yeah, and it's tough too because we get limited stats to really look at it. But yeah, 8,700 for him. Obviously, we all saw what he did at the match play. Plenty long enough. I think he's a really good driver of the golf ball too. It's not just he's long and crazy like a Kevin Tway or something. So yeah, I can get behind Lucas Beauregard. If he's going to be lower owned as well, give me some of the Man Rocket.
Yeah, so the man rocket. So what I'm looking at here, like all the chalk is going to Cabrera Bello right now. He'll be around like 20% owned. I'm not going to fade both Mitchell and Cabrera Bello. I'll probably just fade one of them because I have bets on both of those guys. So they were like my two initial looks for the week that I can get behind fading one of them. Fading both of them might not be the move. And maybe stuff comes back. Being right next to Charles Howell III should take away a lot of the ownership. But Piercy, I have around 12%. Beauregard, I have at like 3% ownership right now.
Yeah. And I think that's just a lot of Americans don't look at his stats. Like you don't get to see it. Whether you're using Fantasy National or anywhere else, like you don't get to see a lot of those stats that pop from the match play, obviously, or any of the other events overseas. So I think that leads to a lot of that. It's a good leverage spot to get some of those Europeans. It's funny you mentioned Rafa. Rafa is one of the guys that when he gets popular, it's an easy fade for me. I like his game and I feel like he's a really good player, but he doesn't have a lot of win equity. I don't see him winning too many events, during his career on the PGA Tour. So Rafa's a guy that looks good on paper. I'm not always quick to pull the trigger on him, so I would lean fading Rafa in this range, to be honest.
I could see that, but I guess the issue is, and this generally how it kind of works in his favor. He's more expensive than he usually is, but he still seems like he's undervalued for this tournament based on the strength of the field. That he doesn't need to win at $8,600. If he gets you a top 7, you're probably pretty good.
And you would be, yeah. Just looking through this though, like from a comparing, win equity across this, like Scott Piercy doesn't have a lot of win equity, but you'll see him pop up from time to time, and I have to imagine he'll be lower owned than Rafa. So those are kind of the leverage spots that I would look to. And I like honestly, if Rafa goes off and finishes top 5, then so be it. But I like getting some of that leverage ahead of the event, and that's kind of the spots that I look.
So why do you think it is that Peters and Olesen are going to garner some ownership, like 8, 9, 10%, but Beauregard isn't? Is it just because of the price point, or people love playing Thomas Peters? That's one thing we know about people.
Yeah, so I actually have stats in here from Thomas Peters. So I don't know what this is pulling in. I'd have to pull it up real fast, but like he actually grades out well. I just know it's very hit or miss on the European tour.
Is that you using the strokes gained total numbers, or
That's
just all right?
Probably what it is.
So yeah. he was 18th at WGC HSBC in China over the swing season. He was 30th at the CAMB, but he was 6th last year at the PGA Championship, so that could help too. And 28th at the Open, but he's been like bad on the European tour this year.
I know, and honestly, this is like a good course fit because he is a bomber. He makes a ton of birdies. He can make a few triples. He's like the Brandon Harkins of Europe. So I don't like from a course fit. I could see him playing well here. I don't like him over some of those guys. Like Scott Piercy to me is going to be someone I'll plant my flag and probably have a good week or a bad week on.
Yeah, I think I can be talking to Scott Piercy as well. I don't think I'm quite as bullish as you are on him because I like Knox a little bit more. And the numbers are telling me to play Ryan Palmer. I never play. Yeah. I have such a hard time doing it. I do like that there's no water on this course. So all of a sudden I can't just open up Shot Tracker and like, oh, good. Ryan Palmer's hit into the water 4 consecutive times. Great. That can't happen here. So that's always a bonus for him.
Yeah, I was kind of bummed because I was looking because he played this event last year and he missed the cut. But all the Byron Nelsons before, he always played well. So it was like a Texas thing. Whenever he came to Texas, he'd play well. When he came to the Byron Nelson, he'd play well. They changed the course last year, and a course that you would think he would play better at without water, and no, he didn't. So he's on my list right now, but I'm not really inclined to play him over some of those other guys.
Maybe you've talked me out of Ryan Palmer and put me on to Scott Piercy because I'm sticking with my man Russell Knox. Do you have a take on Knox? Because he's been playing a lot better.
Yeah, his last. I think he missed a cut last month. Was it? He played his last one. Pull it up.
He played Heritage, I think,
and he missed the cut there, right?
I believe so. He was a part of that team with Stewart at Zurich, and they played pretty well.
Yeah, so he finished 16th here last year. Tee to green, he's been awesome. So I'm gonna basically overlook the missed cut he had. I'm going to play some Russell Knox. The 16th place finish here last year shows me that he at least likes the layout a little bit. But yeah, Russell Knox has been playing too good. I feel like that's a cheap price tag, to be honest.
So if we go into this like 7,500 to 8K level, Scotty Scheffler is the first one at 7,900. CT Pan, JJ Spawn, South Africa's own Justin Harding, Seamus Power, Feinberg's buddy, Jimmy Walker, Pat Perez, Answer, Tway, Mullenix, Matt Jones, KH Lee, Daniel Berger, Fratelli. Like, we got some names in here that we can use. I mean, you could make a case for almost any one of those guys, but I think my favorite, it's going to be Mullenix at 7,600. I don't think I'm alone on that. Just, it seems like he's been lingering for close enough. The skill set fits here with these giant greens. Maybe he can two-putt better than he can chip from around the green. Like, where the hell is Jason Kokrak? This is the perfect course for him, but I guess that's beyond the point. I like Scotty Scheffler. 4 consecutive top 7 finishes on the web.com tour. He was T20 at Valero like 5 weeks ago when he actually made a start on the PGA tour. He's a Texas guy. And I don't know that enough people know about him that it's going to push his ownership way up.
Yeah, he was first one out of there. I honestly thought that was a higher price than what he would come in at. I thought he was going to be one of those right at 7,200 or something, and he would be super chalky. But like a 7,900, I think is actually in that ballpark where people will look to a Knox just above him, CT Pan, JJ Spawn, guys that people know. But yeah, Scotty Scheffler's been playing great. He's obviously a really good player. He should be on tour soon. I think he lost in a playoff last week, so coming in with good form too. So yeah, Scotty Scheffler, I'll be in on 7,900. Sign me up.
What about Pat Perez? I just assumed he was out for the year when I heard he had blown out his Achilles. Apparently that wasn't true. Came back at Zurich, played all right with Jason Duffner. Both those guys played really well last week at Wells Fargo. Is he just getting his game back right now? Because he was fire with his irons. I know he kind of collapsed in the final round, but it's still a T8 at a very tough track for a guy that's not really a bomber. If he can just kind of tread water off the tee here, he's another guy that just makes birdies in bunches. That this could be a perfect scenario for him.
Yeah, to be honest, for the way the 7K kind of shapes out for me, he'll probably be on my out list. And I really liked his form last week. I didn't play him. He played awesome, obviously, finishing 8th. But the longer term form doesn't look great. And there's guys in this range, like in the mid 7K range, that I would prefer to lean to. I don't know where his ownership's at. I don't know if you have that handy, but I'm not in on Pat Perez this week. I don't think he'll play awful, but I like other guys down there.
Well, I got Perez right now at 4%. The only guy that everyone's really gravitating towards, it seems, is Fratelli and Trey Mullenix. Those are the 2 guys that seem to be breaching 10% right now, with Mullenix up around like 17%.
Yeah, Mullenix should be pretty popular. He's obviously been playing good, and people always talk about course fit. I think being a longer hitter, this will be a great course for him. He's obviously coming in playing well. So I'm in on Mullenix too. It depends on what the ownership gets to. A lot of these guys in the mid 7K, you could pretty much, toss them in a hat and pull one out. Like right at 7,500.
KH Lee.
I think I'm not in on KH Lee. He grades out good on statistically, but something in here doesn't stand out to me. But yeah, for Berger, you're talking about Matt Jones and Dylan Fratelli. Those 3 right there all pop to me. They're 7th, 10th, and 11th in my model. I played Berger last week. He didn't do anything great. Matt Jones has been playing pretty well. He played well at this event last year. And then Fratelli continues to do decent off the tee and then just doesn't really perform into strong finishes. But those 3 right there are back to back to back. Those are kind of the names I'm referring to when I look past a Pat Perez.
I like Fratelli here. I'm kind of with you on what he does. I'll probably play Mullenix. Matt Jones, he was a lot of around the green stuff last year, but he has a history of playing really well in Texas. I can't really be talked into Berger. I'd rather play KH Lee this week. That's where my money would go. But even if I drop down just one, what do we do with Brian Stewart? Because actually, you know what? How about Abraham Answer? If you're going to wait off the tee a lot, the guy is still killing it off the tee. Just can't do anything else.
Yeah, his irons have been so bad. I'm not going to play Answer. I think he's probably a good value, 7,600 from where he's been priced in the last 3 or 4 months, really this whole season. But again, I'm trying to be somewhat disciplined with picking out my model as far as timeframes and being strict, because a lot of these guys you could possibly make a case for. Like one in here that pops to me is Kevin Tway, and I can't do it. I don't know what's going on. It might be the strokes gained total from the Masters because he played okay there. But yeah, there's a couple of these guys, like you mentioned, Brian Stewart, which I think he does a lot with his putter, if I'm not mistaken.
He has been, usually you're right, and the putter has been working really well, but his irons have been electric over the past month. Okay. So I'm playing him.
Yeah. Okay. I'm in with you. He's on my list. He have win equity? You know what I mean? Like he's usually around 30th place.
You say that until you have an outright bet on Jamie Lovemark and an outright bet on Byung-Hun An at the Zurich Classic, and all of a sudden Brian Stewart comes out of nowhere and beats them both in a playoff. That's not fun.
That's not fun.
But that could be Chris Stroud. That could be Chris Stroud. I get that twisted from time to time.
Yeah. Stroud pops from time to time, especially down in Punta Cana.
Jimmy Walker.
No.
He's playing better.
He is playing better. And for a guy that tends to lose his driver, this is a good course. I think he played well here last year, if I'm not mistaken.
He did. He had a top 10 finish last season.
So I'm not in on him, but I can't fault you if you're looking that direction. Like I said, there's guys in here that, I mean, Seamus Power really played well last week. Like there's a good host of guys. My model is showing me maybe 6 guys in the mid 7K range. I'm just going to try to go overweight there, and hopefully that it's not necessarily a core, but hopefully that group of 7K guys really outperforms the rest.
Yeah, we'll see. What about this lower $7,000 area besides Brian Stewart, who apparently we both like and couldn't pick out of a lineup of one? But hey, we're gonna play him at $7,400. That works for me. Anyone else in this range you like?
Down at the low end, let's see here. I have where's Austin Cook? He's 74, sorry. So Austin Cook's the last guy I have down there, along with Scott Stallings, who's 7,100. He pops off the page for me.
Oh, man, he has been so bad the past 3 weeks. Like, so bad. I feel like the run is over.
Bad at the Heritage, though?
Yeah, he was, I believe so. Stallings, let's see.
48th.
48th? I think that was all putting. Let's see. 48. No, yeah, maybe I was looking at the wrong one. No, he was bad at Zurich, and that's not in here. That's what I was looking at. Like, he was really bad at Zurich.
Okay. Yeah, he's on my list. I feel like he's kind of made a good turn this season. He's been more consistent. Everyone talks about his fitness and all this stuff. You like to rip on him for the roids issue, but he looks good to me on paper. I'm going to go to him this week as far as a driver of the golf ball. He grades out pretty well. Let's see. Yeah, he grades out pretty well compared to the field in off the tee. So that's a pretty key stat for me this week.
Yeah, he grades out really well for me, too. I just don't know if I can pull the trigger. For me, I like the way that Andrew Landry is starting to round back into form. He plays these short par fours really well, and he ends up, well, he's very good off the tee himself. He has the win in Texas last year at a longer course. I just don't think that many people are going to go to him. He's like 7,200. He's 100-1 in the odds. That he's someone that can just be overlooked pretty easily, but I will not be overlooking Andrew Landry.
Yeah, he's not on my list right now. I'll make a note to look into him a little bit further. You have a knack for these low 7K guys, and somehow they pop for like a top 5. So the one guy I did have a question, though, like Sam Burns off of last week. I heard a lot of people.
The 2 guys that I had to talk about were Wyndham Clark and Sam Burns, 2 guys that people loved last week and screwed over everyone last week. Like, is this always the spot to go back to one of those guys? Like, why did Sam Burns even withdraw? Do we know? Is he actually hurt? Is he just like, fuck, I'm playing terribly, I'm going to withdraw?
Well, so I have a little bit of an opinion on if he's actually hurt. I assume he is, just because I played him in a lot of my higher dollar stuff, and I think he was like 1 under through 2, tied for the lead early Thursday. He goes through the day and just blows up and then ends up withdrawing. So I have to imagine he got hurt at some point. Now going back to him this week, I really, really want to. Like, I feel like this is a great opportunity. If he had some type of treatment on his back, whatever it is, I think this is a good golf course for him. He can shoot 20 under par, no problem. But like you said, I think people will be scared of the WD last week if they got burned, because he was pretty chalky. I think he was like 13 or 15%. So I would lean Burns over Wyndham Clark, to be honest, just from a leverage standpoint.
Good producer note here, as I got it DM'd to me during the show. Andrew Landry out. So don't use Andrew Landry. Good. That's a hot take. That's going to be I'm locking that one in right now. Don't use Andrew Landry. Ignore what I just said. So now I got
strategic fade there.
Well, now I got to figure out if I want to use Burns or if I want to use Clark. How about
why can't you throw them both in? Like,
yeah, but I can't just have everyone. Like, and there's 2 other guys. There's 2 other guys that I like here too. Like, I like Troy Merritt a lot. He's at 7,100, and I like Adam Schenk. Like, it feels like people are winning money playing Adam Schenk every week.
Yeah, Shank's been pretty consistent. He might be the guy I was thinking of that just finishes 30th every single week or 27th. But yeah, Adam Schenk I'm fine with. Troy Merritt I don't see, so you'd have to sell me on Troy Merritt. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got down there. There's nothing really stands out.
All right, let's see if we can try to sell you. 10th at RBC Heritage for Mr. Troy Merritt. He's gained strokes on approach in 3 consecutive events, over 5 at RBC Heritage. We know that when he gets hot with the putter, that's a place you want to be in with him. He was 23rd at RSM, which I had talked about earlier. He was 4th at Safeway earlier this year. He went through this hot stretch around this time last season as well, when he just kind of picked it up over the summer. Like, it started out at like Shell and went all the way through Barbasol, where he ended up winning that week, and he was just so fire with his irons. Last year at this event, he was positive strokes gained ball striking, and he ended up making the cut. He just couldn't putt and couldn't chip. I just look at him in this range, and I know that he can make birdies in bunches, and I like that from down here. Even though he's not the longest hitter, he's a very streaky player, and it feels like he's streaking towards something good right now.
Yeah, his finish has actually been pretty well. I think the only thing that's holding him back for me is looking at his green regulation numbers. It looks like he's losing green regulation to the field in those events, besides the heritage. So that's probably why he's weighted down so far in mine.
He is, but if you just take out greens and regulation and you swap it with opportunities gained over the past 24 rounds, Troy Merritt, number 1 in the field in opportunities gained.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Troy Merritt. Let's do something, and then he'll miss the cut.
Probably. You were so close to Landry, and now we have to go to Troy Merritt. But yeah, I'll add him though. I'll add him and look into him, because that's actually interesting. Is he's got some pops. They're kind of alternate field events. You know what I mean? Like the RSM, the Shriners, the Heritage, more or less. So.
Safeway. And that, I mean, this field outside of like the top 3 guys is basically one of those fields.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Yeah. 7,000, or was he 7,100?
7,100. The only other like 2 guys I was really looking at here, it's kind of popped off to me a little bit. One was JT Poston. The other one was Michael Thompson. I don't really have a feel for either one of them, but they play short par 4s really well.
Yeah, I played Michael Thompson last week. That didn't end very well. So he's not on my list this week. Probably recency bias, because I'm sure the reasons haven't changed from why I liked him last week, besides a miscut. So yeah, there's besides of those guys in like the mid 7K, there's only, Scott Stallings. Vaughn Taylor's on my list. I have to look a little bit deeper, because I think that's held up by last week's showing. I think he played well here last year, if I'm not mistaken.
What about Ryan Blom? He's someone who has played well at RSM, finishing top 10. He was T6 here last year as well. He made the cut last week at Wells Fargo for the first time in like a month and a half. Any love for Ryan Blom?
I'll say no. He's kind of right in the middle of my field, so he doesn't have enough for me to go to.
All right, 6K guys. I'm trying to look at who I have starred down here. I have 3 guys starred already. So I have your main man, the bod, Hank Laboidia at $6,700. I have Nate Lashley at 63 and Seb Straka at 62. Those are the 3 $6,000 guys that I've decided that I'm going to go with this week, unless you talk me out of them or give me better options.
Who was your second guy? Because I have Lebiota. I didn't have your second guy.
It was Lashley. Lashley's
playing good.
Yeah, he's not good. The stats love him though, but like he missed at API and then he missed at Punta Cana, but he was 45th last week, and then he was 8th in Puerto Rico. He was 11th or he was 12th in the desert. Like, he's very hit or miss, but at least it seems like when he spikes, he plays pretty well when the spike happens. I guess he's only missed 2 cuts since last year's. In the past year, he has 13 starts. He's only missed the cut twice. So, and he is a very good ball striker, and he's probably one of the longest hitters on tour.
Yeah, I like Lashley. I saw him pop last week. I didn't play him, and I felt I was kicking myself actually for not playing him, because he was 10K or something like that at Punta Cana, I think. And a 6K Nate Lashley signed me up. He's a really talented player. So I'm with you there. The only other one I had down there was Brandon Harkins, strictly from a birdie or better standpoint. Obviously can make a lot of birdies and a lot of others. But yeah, I had Lebiota and Brandon Harkins. So I added Nate Lashley, and that should be it for me down in the 6K range. There's really not a lot. I know some people have talked about Jim Knaus. Oh,
I've just been calling him Konos.
That's fine. They say his Twitter is Hard K, like Jimmy Hard K. So I assume it's Knaus, but I don't know.
Knaus. I used him last week, actually.
He's been sneaky. I've played him a few times this season, and he really, as far as I know, I don't think he's let me down. I mean, you don't expect a lot from a 6K guy, but
No,
he's one of those that tends to pop.
Yeah, he has 2 top 25 finishes in his past 3 starts, made the cut every single time. The only reason I actually ended up starting to use him is because I'd be watching Golf Channel or tracking my first round leaders every Thursday, and just all of a sudden he'd always be in the afternoon wave on a Thursday. And there'd always be a point around like hole 11. It's like, Jim Konos is like 5 under and he's putting for birdie. And it's like, oh man, I should bet this guy first round leader every week. And then like you look at he's +1 at the end of the round. So what the fuck happened to this guy? Because then,
who are you?
They only show him when he's making birdies. They don't show him when he's hitting it into the middle of the woods. But I could see going to him. I think I like Straka a little bit more. The ball striking has been really good with Straka.
Yeah, I haven't played him. Has he been playing a lot? Because I played him at the Valspar, and I haven't really kept up with his season since then. I know he played pretty well there, the first round at least.
Let's see.
What did he do? He played last week, missed cut.
Yeah, but
off the tee and approach, not bad though. He's just losing strokes putting.
Yeah, like the ball striking is fine around the green, and putting has been very poor. And hopefully the around the green stuff doesn't factor in too much. But again, Wells Fargo, Valero, he gained a whole bunch of strokes at Valspar, so maybe the greens run somewhat similar to that, and all of a sudden we're looking a lot better. But he's only $6,200, so you don't need a ton of him to kind of push it through. He rates out pretty well over the long term too, 10th in birdies or better gained. I think that's a very interesting one to look at this week. Over the past 24 rounds, the top 10 in birdies or better gained per FantasyNational.com, and you can set whatever range you want if you're a member. It's Wyndham Clark, Sungjae, Ryan Palmer, Killa Keith, Brooks, Stallings, Aaron Badley, Ollie, Roger Sloan, Seb Straka, Thorbjorn Olesen, Rafa Cabrera Bello. And then Matt Every, who I think either makes birdie or triple bogey on every hole.
Yeah, pretty much. Unless it's Arnold Palmer, and then he just makes bogeys instead of the triples, and then he ends up finishing, top 10. Except for this year, obviously not. What about Doug Gim down there, 6,500? Obviously, Max Homa coming off of last week. Doug Gim and Max have a good bit of history from the USAM days. I know he's been playing on the web.com. I haven't really kept up with his results, but he's another one down there. 6,500 people probably won't know the name and probably won't see any stats for, or very many stats. So he can pop on these longer golf courses. We saw him do that at Torrey Pines.
Yeah, and he played okay at Pebble the next week as well. The Gim Reaper, the low am at the 2018 Masters when he kept chipping in from the bunker on every single hole in the final round. I don't really have any feelings towards Gim. He's missed his last 2 cuts on the web tour though.
That's not good.
No, that's not great. And before that, he was 29th, 42nd. Sorry, he missed the cut at Pebble. 29th, 42nd, 19th. Miscut, and that third at Torrey Pine, or the T20 at Torrey Pines. And then he followed that up in Bogota with a T3 the next week, and he's just been off ever since.
Okay, so off on Doug Gim. I'll probably throw him in a few $5 lineups, to be honest, but I won't go crazy on him. I like his upside, especially on this golf.
I guess the only other one, if you looked at off the tee and shorter par 4s and opportunities, Carlos Ortiz does rate out pretty well. And he's played well in Texas over the years.
Yeah, he was on my list. I think the approach numbers have been pretty poor the last couple of weeks.
Not great.
Yeah. So again, it's 6,600. I mean, in the 6K range, there's only a few that really stand out to me that look like good plays, but every week you'll see a guy that, will ebbs and flows as far as top 20s, top 15s, top 30s, and then miscut, and then back to a top 30. So, in a bunch of lineups, he's got enough upside for me. There's really not a lot of other guys down here that I would probably venture to play.
Yeah, if we just look strictly at strokes gained approach from down here, guys that pop up inside the top 25, Cameron Tringali is one of them. Josh Teeter is one of them. Nate Lashley, Roger Sloan. Roger Sloan, good at approach, good at opportunities gained. That's really about it. If you could putt a little bit better. Straka is in that mold as well. And Chad Collins. Oh my God, Chad Collins is playing. What year is this? He played last week? Oh my God. I feel like I haven't heard this name in 10 years.
It's been a while, mid 2000s, right? 2006 or something, 2008.
I feel like maybe 2013. It seems like I was using a lot of Chad Collins and cash games along with Brandon DeJong. Those would be my lineups back then.
Brandon DeJong was good.
He made the cut every week.
Bad. Yeah, he was good. I don't know what happened to him. I guess he got hurt, but
I think he's old.
He's still got to be in his 40s. He's got to be. I mean, he's tour potential.
He is 38 years old. He is not as long. I believe he has earned the most money of any player in PGA history without a win.
That's a good accomplishment. I probably wouldn't be off or upset about that.
No, I think he's made like something like $20 million on the PGA Tour because the guy loved coming T7 every single week for like 5 straight years.
Sounds like Damon from last week. He said he doesn't care about winning championships, and he finishes second, takes his 600,000, and he's like, yeah, I still don't care about winning. It's like, dude, just win. But first round leads will get you there too.
Yeah, I mean, if he just bets on himself to be first round leader every week, like we should be doing with Joel. Like you can tell that he's not too concerned about winning because he's not playing this week.
Yeah, I know. This would be a good one for him too.
And especially because like last year, Wise ended up coming second at Wells Fargo, came out to win this one the following week. It would set up really well for Damon, I think. Damon, Vegas, and Jason Kokrak are the 3 guys that really should be playing this week.
Yeah, but I think a lot of them have played so many weeks in a row. They have to take a break somewhere. And I wouldn't call this course like a Mickey Mouse course. Like it's real goofy on the greens, but I can't imagine it's at the top of their to-play list, like Arnold Palmer Invitational or Wells Fargo or something like that. So it makes sense for them to skip this one before the PGA, US Open, British Open starts rolling in.
Are all those guys even in those events? Like is Joel Damon in the PGA Championship? He might be. I actually have no idea.
I assumed he was, but I didn't check him into the field. I don't know off the top of my head now.
No, I can look that up. What do you think we do with lineup construction for the week? So we're playing in the $5 150 max. Most people are not going to play 150 entries. Maybe they'll play 5, maybe they'll play 10, maybe they'll play 3. I don't know. But what do you think is the proper way to approach your lineups? Do you go big stars and scrubs? Because we just talked about the $6,000 range, and there are some enticing options, but not a lot.
So in like the $5 150, how I would approach it is I would play a Hideki in a 3 entry max. So we'll say like the Pat Mayo Open, we would play Hideki or Brooks or something like that. And then when I go into the $5, I'd be looking to fade the 10K range, hoping they draw, 20% ownership for each of them. And then just kind of camp out 9K down to like, we'll say 6,800 or something like that, depending on your player pool. I think that's really good leverage. I mean, still, those guys are the class of the field with Brooks and Hideki, but the odds are they're not going to win. And if you can avoid 25% for Hideki, 24-ish, 23-ish% for Brooks, and they don't finish in the top 10 or top 20, like you have extreme leverage on guys that went that route, especially in the 150.
So
150 lineups.
If that was, let's say you're not going to play the 150, let's say you only play 10, would you amend that strategy at all? Or even if you talk about a 3-max, if we talk about a 3-max strategy, you would use one of the top end guys, you think?
I would, yeah. I would definitely play Hideki in one of my 3-max. Brooks, I'm probably not going to play Brooks, to be honest. I'll just bet him and avoid that situation. And I view them differently than like a Stinson and a Leishman, to be honest. So Stinson, Leishman, I would consider in my player pool for 10 lineups in the $5.
So when it breaks down, it looks right now, and I'll update this on the live chat, and we'll talk about the top owner-owned guys, but it does look like it's going to be Keith Mitchell, Brooks Koepka, Rafa Cabrera-Bello, and Trey Mullinax as the very top guys in terms of ownership, as it stands on a Tuesday morning. And the leverage guys that we kind of pointed out, there's a few of them around, but it looks like Beauregard and Grace are like the best 2 who are coming in at like sub 5%.
Yeah. Yeah, they should be in your pool. I mean, like for 10 lineups in the 5, you have enough leeway. You could, add them in 2 or 3 lineups and you're at 30%, 20, 30%. You'll be 4 or 5 times the field. So, that's the route I would take if I was building 10 or say 20 lineups in the $5.
Finally, it appears like Joel Damon and Jason Kokrak are not qualified for the PGA Championship.
Yeah, but a bunch of these club pros are. Makes a lot of sense.
Listen, you can go become a club pro and play yourself in.
I don't want to be a club pro, but yeah, I have differing opinions about the PGA Championship as a major, but
I know I want to hear about this. Tell me about it.
I just don't have a lot of respect for how they run the PGA Championship, to be honest. Like, I get why they do it with the club pros. They do their championship and they get in. They leave a lot of guys out that deserve to be in to the PGA Championship. And then the way they run the PGA Championship, like from the rules officials being PGA guys instead of USGA officials, we've had a lot of issues. Like, obviously, DJ lost a PGA Championship because no one told him that he can't ground his bunker on a cart path, ground his club on a cart path that was sand. and that was a hazard. So there's been a lot of really weird situations over the years. I'm just not a fan of the PGA in general.
What do you think the setup is going to look like at Bethpage? Do you think it's going to look US Open-y?
I don't think it can't, to be honest. Like that course sets up with longer-ish rough, has a lot of fescue if you go a little bit further out. Depending on what the rain's been like, I don't know how you really can't set that up like a US Open, to be honest. I don't think they'll bring the fairways in as much, but I'm viewing it like a US Open as far as the golf course layout, because that's the way Bethpage Black is played. Like, that's just how it is.
So if you had like an early lean of the players that you think you're going to be targeting, obviously if we look at the top, all those guys are really good, but like, is there any one or two players in particular that stick out to you? Like when I talked about this with Feinberg, I was thinking like Tommy, Xander, Sergio, maybe even Reed as the guys in that sort of like middle range that I kind of like. And I'm kind of torn on Bryson right now.
Yeah, I like Bryson. He was one of the first ones I looked through when I saw pricing. Yeah, I don't have really an early lean on any guy terribly strong. I think looking at guys that drive the ball really well is going to be key for me. Obviously, I always add that in with like green regulation stuff, but I anticipate the golf course being pretty penalizing off the tee. So if you're missing a lot of fairways, you're going to struggle. A lot of those greens are raised up too. So like if you hit in the rough, you're going to have a tough time stopping the golf ball. That's how I'm anticipating it playing. So I'm looking for guys that hit a lot of fairways. We'll say Sergio, a Stinson even. Tommy Fleetwood is going to be super popular. I like him a ton. So that's how I'm viewing that golf course. Obviously, we'll know more when, Monday rolls around or Sunday night probably.
Would you even consider like higher ball flight players because of the rough, that if you have any chance of stopping it from the rough, you can't get any spin on it, you just want as high a trajectory as possible? Like, I would look at like someone like Jason Day, for example.
Yeah, and Jason Day's a really good scrambler too. Like it's hard to ever count him out of any event. I would look at trajectory, but I wouldn't look at it because of hitting it in the rough. I would look at it because you would have an advantage into those greens. So like Tiger's always talked about US Opens when he was back in his heyday. He had a big advantage over guys because he hit it and he could stop it on greens that guys couldn't. That's why he won the US Open at Pebble by like 15 shots. So I do like trajectory. There's really no easy way to compute the iron trajectory and the driver trajectory because it's two different shots. But yeah, just having that in your mind maybe of like, hey, this guy does hit it really high, I'll look to him versus maybe really in the lower price. All the elite guys can play well in any golf course. We'll make that clear.
Yeah, it's going to be one of these things that how do you pick and choose the guys from down the list? Don't take any of the PGA pros. That's probably a good way to think about it.
Don't.
I'm just looking back at it right now. I think that there are very like, when you look at like 2016 when Patrick Reed won at Bethpage, when it was played as the Barclays, obviously probably not as difficult, although it still played as a really tough course that year. Reed won. Then it was like Griot, Sean O'Hare, Adam Scott, Jason Day, Gary Woodland, Kokrak, Ricky Fowler, Ryan Moore. Like, there's not a ton of like really big hitters on that list. It's a lot of guys who are really good around the greens.
Yeah, really good around the greens, and I would say accurate, but Patrick Reed's never really been an accurate driver. So yeah, scrambling will definitely be important at that golf course. But yeah, you got to look at ball strikers. I mean, all the elite guys will fit into that category, but when you go down the list at the longer shots, guys that have really been playing well tee to green, ball striking wise in recent results, that's who I would camp out at, because all those other guys really they hit it very similarly, besides like a Jason Day and a Patrick Reed that can scramble when they hit their irons bad. That seems to pop out quite a lot. Do
you think this is a bad course for Rory?
No, because he's such a good driver of the golf ball. I think this is a fantastic golf course for him. I think he'll drive the ball better than anybody, be in position with his wedges. If he can hit his irons decent, he'll be fine.
I agree that he's great off the tee, but I think I would rather have the Brooks Dustin mold where it seems like Rory's like the biggest hitter, and when he gets it going, he's unstoppable. But I feel like those guys are just a safer bet to hit it both long and straight, that Rory could be looking at some gigantic numbers. If like you see it happen like twice around where he just shanks it in the middle of the woods because he's just trying to get too aggressive. We even saw it on Sunday at Wells Fargo, that if you do that at Bethpage, you're going to be screwed.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with those guys because DJ can almost play any golf course really well. The reason why I think Rory will play really well is a lot of those holes will shape right to left, which is his natural ball flight. I can just see him. He hits it so high and soft that even with his driver, he's not going to run through a lot of fairways. I feel like DJ hits it a little more penetrating. I would probably lean Rory just from the tee shot aspect. So I get what you're saying. I just think Rory sets up really good for that golf course. Did he play it at the RB or
at the
Dell or whatever it was?
Yeah, he was 13th, I believe, that year.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough about all those guys because they're all really tough, really, really similar tee to green. But yeah, I like Rory quite a lot. I bet Phil before he exploded last week on Friday, like a month ago, and he was like 60-1 because he's had a pretty good showing at this golf course over the years. So I'm not sure how good I feel about that now. Even if he is hitting bombs in the rough, it's not a great combination, but. Yeah, any of those guys with hitting a lot of fairways on the higher end, that'll probably be my lean over driving distance. And then at the low end, guys hit a lot of fairways over driving distance will be my lean.
Rory that year was T31. He actually lost the most strokes of any player in the field putting. He was fifth tee to green that week. It was Scott, Kokrak, Reed, Schwartzel. Actually, Schwartzel lost the most strokes. He lost 10 strokes putting that week. Sean O'Hare and then Bubba Watson and Rory were the two. Up next. So I wonder if I select, just to kind of walk through this here, if we look at it by driving distance gained versus fairways gained. Fairways gained. Yeah, everyone who hit a lot of fairways did pretty well. In terms of driving distance, it was sort of a scatter shot where, yeah, like Dustin, JB Holmes, Ricky Fowler, Bubba, Vegas, all these guys came like 13th to 45th kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Andrew, I mean, going through the list, like Hideki's going to be a guy that's probably going to be super popular his stats can't really go as bad as no matter how bad he plays this week, his stats will look good. So he'll be a guy that I'm sure a lot of people go to. And then again, Finau, like you didn't talk about Finau. I can't think of his ball flight off the top of my head, but he might be a guy that scrambles really well. Like if it sets up similar to a US Open where scoring's not that low, I can see Finau playing pretty well.
Finau was surprisingly T12 here when it was played in 2016. I'm just very interested in just from the way that we've kind of talked around all these guys. I don't know if Tommy and Bryson are going to come in with the same sort of like ownership or popularity that maybe we thought 2 months ago.
Yeah, I would probably say Fleetwood's going to be more popular than Bryson. I feel like he gets a 25% kick every single week he plays.
I guess it depends when the pricing actually comes out who he's situated next to is going to be the big thing. Like if you put Tommy next to Finau will probably be higher owned. People love playing Tony Finau.
Yeah, I can't fault anyone for playing him either. I mean, he's good. Last year he finished in the top 5 or top 10, 3 out of the 4 majors, something like that. So he obviously does well on those type of tracks.
All right, Drew Mathews, tell us what's going on at fantasygolfbag.com.
Yeah, man, we got all of our stats and all our tools up there. Content-wise, we're loaded up, and podcast came out today. So that was actually with Skylar and Axis. They help us out on the website. And then next week, we'll be ready to go for the PGA Championship and trying to do an extra breakdown of a lot of the European guys. I think guys coming over from overseas get overlooked, and there's a good leverage spot when you dive in deeper, similar to like we talked about today with Beauregard and Thomas Peters, et cetera. So looking forward to the PGA Championship next week. And yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Everyone just go subscribe to fantasygolfbag.com. And when Drew talks about Juice Luton, just use Juice Luton next week.
That's right. Juice it up.
Best Jerry curl in the biz. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me on Twitter at the PME. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. My betting cheat sheet will be out on Facebook on Wednesday afternoon. My DraftKings cheat sheet will be in the description of this video and podcast and up on dkplaybook.com. That's where you can find everything. Become a member at fantasynational.com today. Do it on Wednesday. Get yourself a weekly membership and roll it over into the next week for the PGA Championship. Get 2 for the price of 1. I highly recommend you do that. There's a lot of money on the line, and as Drew knows, you can win $1 million at one of these things and just be rich. What's it like being rich, by the way?
It's really stressful, man. Tax season just passed. It was not the funnest, to be honest. But I mean, things could be worse. I could be as rich as Jeff El Jefe. So I'll count my blessings.
It's true. So yeah, if people don't know, Drew won the Masters Millionaire Maker last season, so he still hopefully has some of that money left after paying the tax man and bleeding it all back. But become a member of FantasyNational.com today. Go check that out. Also playing the Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Open. The link is in the description. Let's get that full as quickly as possible. And if you want to be in a draw for $20 DK, smash the like button, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and tell me who your 2 favorite fades above $9,000 are this week at the Byron Nelson. All right? Pat Mayo, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!